Hello, and welcome to I'm Too Busy. I'm Christina Flach, your host. I'm a celebrity makeup artist and CEO with a passion for all things beauty, wellness, and success. On this show, I'll take you on exciting journeys, sharing personal stories and insights from inspiring entrepreneurs. Together, we will explore manifestation, health, wellness, and the secrets to thriving in life and business. Let's jump in and get inspired. Hi, and welcome to I'm Too Busy. I am Christina Flach, and today we have an extraordinary guest. Dr. Lizellen La Follette is a globally recognized, board-certified OBGYN researcher, advisor, and innovator in women's health. Her work spans fertility, menopause, reproductive longevity, and breakthrough technologies that are helping women better understand their bodies and make more informed health decisions. She has contributed to groundbreaking research, advised leading women's health companies, and devoted her career to improving the lives of women at every stage. And what I love about this conversation is that we're talking about issues that affect women deeply, but also impact their confidence, their well-being, and even their closest relationships. And as Dr. La Follette has once shared with me, intimate health issues like vaginal dryness can have a major impact on women's comfort, confidence, and the closest relationships. And that's exactly why these conversations matter. Welcome. How are you?
I am fine. I am so delighted to be here and so kind of you to have me on. And it's such a pleasure to talk about these issues that face us every day and that not everybody is willing to talk about. And my job going forward in my new pivot of my new career as taking care of women midlife and beyond, I'm finally not going to be delivering babies in the middle of the night, a sadness after 34 years, but a great joy to move into the next stage of our lives and make sure it's the best.
I love this. So you've had an incredible career across medicine, research, and innovation. What originally drew you to women's health?
Well, that's a great question. So when I was in high school, I followed around a cardiologist. And we learned early on, this was just out of high school in the 70s in San Francisco. And we learned early on that women and men with heart attacks were quite different. We learned that men actually had heart attacks early, 50, often as sudden death being the first demonstration of heart disease, but that women didn't get it for 10 or 15 years later. And what was that protective part, right? What made that different? Why are women 15 years later getting a heart attack compared to men? And then you realize it's hormones, it's estrogen. And so that drew me to, do I want to take care of cardiology and cardiovascular surgery and do all that fancy surgery, or do I want to take care of women? And that, you evolve as you go through medical school and then finally pick residency, and OBGYN is what I wanted to do.
Perfect. What do you think is the biggest gap right now in how women are educated about their bodies and long-term health?
Well, we've had a fabulous disconnect in America about from high school sex ed to when you're in your 50s. I mean, think about it. You were taught in high school not to get pregnant and not to get an STI. Okay, hang on. Is that really the whole conversation? Right? What about sex? What about what's safe? What about what works for you? What about all that? So what I find is it's somewhere after your kids are launched or about to be launched, you start asking those questions. And even though you would have thought that somebody would have explained this to you sooner, they weren't explained. So how does sex matter? How does your relationship matter? How does sex for you look like when it's good? What is it that makes it better? And I think it's such a crazy conversation that we're having 30 years after high school, but it has to do with the mindset of don't, make sure you don't do anything wrong, and pivoting to, well, how about the good part?
And what is the good part?
I think the thing that we need to understand of women is what parts work. In menopause, all the parts are still there. Whether it's clitoral stimulation, whether it's what I call PIV, penis and vagina, that's okay for some women. It's great for the guys, but let's figure out how it works for both of us, because this simplicity of all these erectile dysfunction ads in which all of a sudden they're all ready to go. Excuse me, where are you going? Can't we at least even the score and make sure that the receptive other side actually has the same pleasure as you do? Because it seems relatively simple for men, and it is far from simple for women. And our job is to make sure, number one, we ask for it. Number two, we educate. Number three, we even the score so that sex is pleasurable as a routine, not as an exception for both of us.
Well, I think it's more of an emotional thing for women. I mean, it really is. I mean, when your head's in it, your body follows. And if your head isn't there,
exactly,
it doesn't work. So I think that's part of the problem.
But that's exactly right. So if you think about the way we are wired, right? For guys, it's relatively mechanical, right?
Right.
But for women, it's not mechanical.
No, it's
right.
all here.
Exactly. So when you start to hear about testosterone and all these other things that people are supposed to be doing, I got news for you. Those are band-aids on a problem from head to vagina that hasn't been addressed. And so I always feel like you need to make sure that we understand all parts of this, and that includes this. If you think somebody's going to walk in on, that's not going to be a turn on. If you do not have the time to relax and actually understand that you're attracted to this person, it's not going to work. So there are so many other obstacles for us that we need to take control of and understand.
We hear so much about hormones, but it's still confusing. What's the most important thing women should actually understand about their hormones?
Well, I think hormones have had such a bad rap for so long. Look, your ovaries function up until you're not ovulating, but that's on the reproductive side. That's not on the hormonal, functional, bone density, hair loss, skin side. The ovaries are still there secreting estrogen, testosterone, progesterone throughout your life as long as somebody hasn't removed them. And just because you're not ovulating, namely, are we really just reproductive vehicles? Come on. We're spending half of our lives post-reproductive years. So
True.
those are so important. Those hormones are so important. We need to understand how to use them. We need to understand what works, what doesn't. What are we losing? What do we need to add back? And that messaging has been so warped over time for women to just, people have been saying, oh, well, it causes cancer. No, that's not what those studies ever showed. And that's misinformation. And it's been a great disservice for women.
I think so. I mean, even now, I had a conversation literally a month ago with a friend of mine, and she was like, she gained all this weight. Her hormones are just all over the place. And I said, I was telling her about that I'd had my hormones checked and that she needs to go do that and get on hormone replacement. And she's like, no, that causes cancer. I'm like, what year are you living in? That is a myth. It's not even close to accurate. At what age should women really start thinking about longevity and proactive health, not reactive health?
Right. I mean, right at midlife, right? So the thing that's so interesting, if you look at all the organs in all of our bodies, right, whether you're a man or a woman, all of the organs continue to age over time. The ovaries, in terms of the reproductive function, plummets. So all of a sudden, we have an organ that isn't secreting an egg, but still is doing a lot. So all these graphs that you see about everybody's organs changing over time in terms of longevity, the ovaries decline in terms of ovulation and reproduction does not mean it's absolutely zero, because that's only looking at one variable. What about the other things that'll help you? And so one of the things we need to understand is what's going to help you? How are we going to help your life be better over time? And how can we supplement what you've lost after you've lost your periods to be able to make your life better?
I always say beauty starts from inside out. From your perspective, how much do nutrition and gut health actually impact how we look and feel?
Well, I have to tell you, let's talk about gut, right?
My favorite subject.
It's a great topic. And
it is.
We are just starting to understand that the insight into gut and into leaky gut and to gut dysfunction may lead to a bunch of diseases that we're just understanding. Parkinson's, new study came out just a week ago. You need vitamin B and you need vitamin D we know about, but vitamin B, okay, really? How easy is that to get? Very. So that helps your gut health. That helps your gut not be leaky and make sure that the absorption of the nutritional components you need are there. So if we don't look at the gut, we don't look at how we eat, We then don't have the bodies we want, and then we're not helping ourselves. So it's this vicious cycle of, I don't like the way I look. I don't like where my belly is. I don't like what's happening, and I'm not able to fix it. So you have to address all of these things one at a time and realize that everything's connected because, by the way, it's in your body. So by definition, they're all connected.
Right. Are there specific foods or nutrients that truly make a difference for skin, hair, and overall vitality?
Yeah, well, there are some. There's a lot more that people would like let you to believe that you need. There's clearly vitamin D has made a difference, and it's probably not as big a difference as we think, but it's clearly some decreased inflammation. There clearly are some wonderful animal models that suggest vitamin D will prolong your life. So I don't think we've seen that same results in humans, but it's certainly not that easy to get and not that hard to get in terms of vitamin D. This vitamin B now, in terms of the absorption of the gut and prevention of Parkinson's, that's interesting. That should be
That is,
included.
I hadn't heard that one
I
yet.
know it's very new, and that's my job is to stay on the new information about this because it's so simple. So you need a multivitamin for sure.
Mhm.
There's a big push right now about protein. I think it's probably a little over the top, but if you think about protein, it takes your body more work to metabolize protein. So therefore, just think about it from that perspective. If you want to get a metabolic boost to be able to keep your body the way you want it to be, you probably need more protein. There's a question about creatine in terms of muscle and all the rest of it. Maybe makes sense, maybe doesn't, not exactly clear. And everybody thinks the peptides are the best thing since sliced bread. The GLP-1s are the best thing since sliced bread. The other ones we don't know enough about yet. I'm not saying we won't. I'm just saying we don't know enough yet.
Mhm.
So,
Let's talk about exercise for a moment. What type of movement is most important for women as we age, especially when it comes to hormones and longevity?
all right. So movement is such a fabulous question. So if you just look at the basic information about how exercises impacts longevity, you need a 20-minute walk a day to have a longer life. Now,
Wow.
that doesn't seem like a lot, right? But you got to do it. And for women, you also need resistance training and weights because we lose upper body mass, we lose bone mass as we age.
Mhm.
And you need the cardiovascular health to get your heart rate up. So if you combine all of that, you need to walk, you need to lift weights, and you need to push your heart rate up, whether that's biking, whether that's running, whether that's doing little extra speed walks while you're doing it. All of those things are the three components that women need. So one for their body mass in terms of bone density and protecting that, one to get your heart rate up, and one to just make sure that getting out in this beautiful nature does make a difference for your psyche as well as longevity. So sometimes it's awful hard to put it all together and think as though you got to be at the gym for 3 hours and nobody's going to have the time to do it. So the least you can do that'll make a difference and does make a difference is walking. So park further away. Figure out where you
Yeah,
really need
it's
to.
that consistency is exactly what you're saying. I totally agree. Yeah, just little things like take the stairs, don't take the elevator.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I've never taken the elevator in the hospitals. In fact, some of the new hospitals that all got redone for the, earthquake protection,
Mhm.
right? I'm like, I don't even know where the elevators are. So it's just, I just take the stairs. Don't even discuss it. Just take the stairs.
I love that. Is there a connection between muscle metabolism and aging well that women might be overlooking?
Yes. If you think about bone loss, what's connected to your bone? Tendons and muscles.
Right.
Women lose upper body strength out of proportion with their lower body strength. I mean, they lose lower body strength too. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm just saying if you look at the disproportionality, we're not used to lifting weights. We're not used to actually pushing ourselves on the upper body. And Pilates can be great, but I've seen an awful lot of women lose bone and muscle mass by doing Pilates. So you have to really push the Pilates to really get that weight training effect from Pilates and as well as bone health. So if you think about your body as a whole, you want to push the muscles that you have, and you don't want to lose muscle because
Right.
that feeds back onto your bone, and that'll make a difference in terms of your skeletal health.
I go to Pilates, I go to yoga, and I lift weights. But what I do in my Pilates class that I see that I am the only one that does this. When we're doing the lower body work, I always have the hand weights, and I'm using that the whole time. So I'm really making it because you and I'd had this conversation.
Yeah.
I've made a concerted effort, this past year to really do that so I can get that extra bit because I'm there anyway. I might as well be lifting some weight.
Exactly.
For
Exactly.
busy women, what are a few realistic daily habits that can make impact over time?
All right. So first of all, find some part of your day that you can walk. Figure out whether it's lunch, figure out it's a break, whatever, some phone call didn't follow through, or some, if you're working online, take a minute and actually go for a walk and get out there and go for 20 minutes. Just do it. You can even do it at little 5-minute intervals, and all of a
Right.
sudden you've done 20 minutes. The second thing that women need to do is that you need to do something, even if it's only 10 minutes with weights. Be consistent. Do it 10 minutes 3 times a week. Do your upper body for 10 minutes. Do your lower body for 10 minutes. Do it 3 times. Boom. Add it to something you love to do. If you love to walk, take some weights with you. Get some ankle weights, get some hand weights. If you love to Peloton, do your Peloton, get off the Peloton, do your weights, or do it the opposite way, whatever. Both of them work. But you need to combine the cardiovascular aspect, the movement aspect with the weight aspect. And that missing piece for most women has been very interesting. Most women didn't know we really need to be doing more weights. And you can see it in the bone densities. When you order a bone density for somebody in their 50s, it's amazing how many have bad bone just to start. And that's a problem.
That's
Yeah,
shocking.
scary.
I also think it's important to be shocking your body constantly. That's why I try and do something different every day because
Right.
your body just gets so used to, same thing with skincare. Your body gets used to a certain workout every day, every day. So it's like do yoga one day, do Pilates, do something different all the time. So your body doesn't know what's going on. Another thing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on, have you seen those vibration plates?
Yes.
What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Well, I don't know if they actually work. I love the idea of it, right? It's sort of like some between balance and sort of shocking your bone and your
Mhm.
muscle to sort of equilibrate itself. It's an interesting question. If you think about what NASA uses to get astronauts' bones back over time, you got a lot of things like that that might actually make a difference. I mean, luckily we haven't been on the moon for a month, so that our bone density is crap. But when those
Right.
yeah, those astronauts come back, their bone density is terrible. And
That's
so
so
they,
surprised,
isn't it?
shocking.
So they really do a lot of resistance stuff and they do things like that that may make a difference. I just don't know if we're low enough for it to make a difference. And I don't know if it makes a difference if your bone's already good. But we have to learn this stuff. These are the kind of things we have to be studying. There's a belt called Osteo Boost, and you wear it around like a fanny pack. Maybe that's enough. 30 minutes a day. Sure. I mean, especially if you're moving with it. I think these weighted vests are very funny. You have to probably do 8 hours of jumping jacks for it to make a difference on your spine. So go ahead if you have 8 hours of jumping jacks in you and knock yourself out. I don't know what else you're going to be doing. But so I think the thing about all these exercises is add it to something you love to do because otherwise you won't do it. It doesn't matter what I
It's
tell
true.
you to do. You won't do it.
It's true.
So I walk out of my door every day. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know when I'm going to do it, and I don't know how much I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it. And so give yourself grace. If you didn't do it at noon, come home and do it at 5:30. You could even do it after dinner for crying out loud. I mean, you're not eating that much food that
Well,
you
they
would
say
be.
that's the best thing to do after dinner is go for a 10-minute walk.
Exactly.
Like they say
Exactly.
that makes a monstrous difference.
It does.
I have a vibration plate and it goes on for 10 minutes. And when I don't have like a lot of time, I will do a 10-minute workout on there. I'll put it on YouTube. And I'm telling you, I'm not a sweater and I will sweat. I will do weights with it. I will hold
Perfect.
planks, sit. There's a whole
How
slew
fun.
of exercises. And,
Yes.
but I feel like even if I can't get a workout in because I'm so
Good.
busy, I do that. And I feel like the guilt because you know what the worst is? And I know everyone feels this all day long. You're thinking, I've got to go work out. I've got to go work out. I hate that thought in my head. So
No.
that removes it. And I find it makes life a lot easier.
But you notice what you did. You gave yourself grace to say 10 minutes is okay. So,
Yes.
5 minutes is okay, guys. We don't have to be doing 2 hours.
Right.
So, whatever little bit that you do, just add to it. Just add to it and give yourself a break that even little bits at a time like that is making a difference. And that's while you'll keep doing it because otherwise you'll just say, oh, I didn't get to it, so I won't get to it.
Right. Fertility is such an emotional and time sensitive topic. What are women often misunderstanding today?
Well, I have to say that I always love the fact that both the internet and AI have bombarded us with information. I have to say that at least AI, I think, is getting a little closer to good information. Google searches have been the bane of my existence as a physician. But I have to say that women now at least are asking the questions about, oh, hang on, what about my ovarian function? How many kids can I have? Will I be able to do this when I want to do this? I think there's a great false hope, and I think it's actually very misleading to assume that every 30-year-old should go get her eggs frozen because that's her insurance for fertility. It is not. You have to freeze 15 eggs to get one embryo, and you don't even have the sperm, by the way. I'm going to remind you that's the two combo. So it is a falsehood, and it is, in a sense of, in my mind, misleading information for all of these tech companies to say we will pay for egg freezing when that is really not the insurance that you need. If you want insurance in terms of fertility, freeze an embryo. Have somebody that you'd like to have a kid with, and hopefully that's somebody that's in your future down the line. But if it's not, get a sperm donor and freeze embryos because that's where your insurance is. It's not an egg freezing. And that is
That is really powerful.
it is just wrong. And every time I have some 30-year-old coming in and saying, well, I think I should freeze my eggs, I'm like, why? Why? We haven't even run into a problem yet. And you do not get one for one in terms of egg freezing. You have to do it 3 and 4 times. It's $7,000 a pop, and it's not your insurance. And so I do think that that's enormously misleading. However,
Wow.
if you want to know what do you look like, how is it going to help, what's happening, you can do some things. You can come in for an ultrasound and we can count follicles. We can do some hormone tests. By the way, the hormone tests were showed in North Carolina. They were done by Duke, and they looked at all these hormones that we're using for markers of fertility: AMH, FSH, estradiol. And they just drew it on all the women that were coming in for student health. And 2 years later, they looked at those markers and they looked at the women that had gotten pregnant. There was no correlation between those three numbers and getting pregnant. No correlation.
Wow.
So, what does that tell you? We don't have good markers. We need better ovarian function markers. We don't have them yet. So, our job is stop wasting money on silly things, including egg freezing, and let's figure out something that will really tell you, okay, should we move things forward or should we not in terms of your fertility?
Let's talk about something that isn't discussed enough: intimate health. Why are these issues often overlooked, and what should women feel more comfortable addressing with their doctors?
Well, I don't think women talk about sex enough anyway. I don't know whether it's the prudish way we were brought up or whether or not it's just a taboo over time. But if we took a chapter out of men's books and recognized that pleasure was the sort of number one thing that made sense in terms of sex, there would be a lot more conversations about intimacy. My conversation to young women is, do you have a vibrator? Do you know how to actually get an orgasm on your own? Because it's going to be really hard to convince somebody else to help you do that if you don't know how to do it yourself. But this
It's
is
true.
right. This is an enormous education that's been missed. And for some reason, it's been put down and belittled rather than an important part of full sexual health. And that includes all the people that have had cancer and that have been on suppressive meds and all the rest of it. It's like, yes, they survived cancer, but you sure as heck put a damper on anything intimate. So we need to actually address this. We need to be better at understanding that estrogen vaginally is safe for everyone, including cancer patients, and that we should give people that opportunity to understand it and educate themselves. We should be talking about the laser, which will restore skin to, better levels in terms of collagen and elastin. We should be talking about everything that can make a difference for women's sexual health and their bladders and their vaginas in general. And that conversation is an ongoing one and different with everybody. My most difficult patient to talk to about this is someone who's had 3 C-sections and then got breast cancer. Okay. That vagina has never expanded enough to be able to grow. And now you're menopausal and now you're on suppressive meds. Everything gets tighter and smaller and shrinks, and everything is painful. That is the trifecta. That is really tough. And my job is to educate them. Okay, we have Millie, we have these devices that can vibrate and expand the vaginal opening to help. We can use estrogen, we can use the Mona Lisa Touch laser. All of those things have to be at our basically fingertips to be able to talk to women so that they can actually know that there is a chance for them to get better.
I heard you say in the interview you were doing last week on your shoot that vaginal dryness affects everybody. And I thought about that for a while and I thought that was so interesting, but it really does because it's not just about the dryness, it's about the hormones, the mood, which affects the relationships. And it trickles down with your relationship with your children, your husband, everyone. And so I thought it was such a funny thing that you said, but
Yeah,
it's so
yeah,
true. Do you want
yeah.
to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the problem that happens with women, and they, as we change in terms of the cycles getting further and further between, and particularly in menopause, especially 2 and 3 years after menopause, the juicy vagina that we were used to slowly gets less juicy. And by which I mean the skin becomes thinner. And the Italians a decade ago decided to biopsy menopausal skin before they put this laser across it. And this skin, it looks like paper. It has no
Mhm.
blood supply, it has no collagen, it has no elastin, it has no basement membrane. It looks like if you touch it, it's going to slough right off and it's going to burn and it's going to sting and hurt, and which is exactly what many women experience. So they were smart enough to, in breast cancer women, put a fractional CO2 laser, which is the same laser that people use on your face to
Mhm.
resurface your face. Use it every 2 hours of a clock in the vagina, every centimeter of the vagina, and that skin now becomes what it used to be. And so women
Interesting.
all of a sudden are like, wait a minute, I am not dry. I am not feeling as though things are sticking to me. I am not feeling as though I'm always completely parchment. And those things to change it is, it's a laser. So you think about it, there've been such in the aesthetics business, they know that if you use a laser, the judicious use of energy helps change skin. Guess what? The vaginal skin, of which the bladder is above and the rectum is below, that skin is responsive to energy just like your face. And so
Interesting.
it's amazing that it has taken people so long to think about that as an option. I got the laser a decade ago because to me, I cannot, as your gynecologist, make your skin go back in time to have the collagen layer and the lubrication that you used to have without energy. But the physics is the same on your face as it is in the vagina. It's just that the bladder's also there, and so you get the benefit that the bladder's more stable. And it clearly is a difference in terms of intercourse. So there's finally some evolution of the mind thought in terms of the thinking of how can you make sex better with less vaginal dryness over time. And we need to have these different devices and these different ways of making difference because it's not okay to say, oh, sorry, your vaginal skin is like parchment. That's the end of it. That's not a solution.
So, how many times do women go in for a treatment like this with the
So
laser?
I saw somebody today, it was so funny. The recommendation is that you do 3 treatments 6 weeks apart.
Okay.
The first time that you do the fractional CO2 laser, the same way that's true for the face, you literally do one depth because you're going across this very thin membrane of your menopausal skin. But the next 2 times, you now have normal skin, so you need to go deeper. So you
Hmm.
can stack it, what's called stacking in fractional CO2 laser land. So you stack for 3. So you do one treatment, 6 weeks later, you do a second treatment, which is 3 times deeper, and the third treatment 6 weeks later is 3 times deeper again. So if you think about the layers in which you've gone to 7 layers in 3 treatments. Then you need one every year, or you need one every 6 months, or you need one every 18 months. You need it when you remember. So I
Is
saw
it
somebody,
painful?
no, it's amazing. It's not. The innervation of the vagina is at the opening. So you make sure there's numbing at the opening. And until you get to the cervix, this laser hits before the cervix. So you don't have to worry about HPV or cervical problems or anything like that. It literally is aiming down. So it never hits the cervix. It goes to that length of the vagina, though. And it goes down all the way a centimeter of the vagina. And you hit it, noon, 2, 4, 6, 8, every 10, every centimeter of the vagina. It doesn't hurt at all. And the patient today said, well, you fitted me for a pessary years ago, which I don't use. But however, things are starting to come back and they're coming down. I'm like, well, I haven't seen you for 3 years. The laser will make a difference. And by the way, let me check and see if the pessary still works. Yes, it does. But wouldn't it be better to get better collagen, better elastin, and better basement membrane of this skin to see whether you even need it? So this pivoting of understanding how skin can influence function needs to be addressed in the vagina as well as it is all over your body, right? So if you have age spots, you deal with the IPL, right? If you have fine lines and wrinkles, you can do a non-ablative laser, either the 1540 or you can go all the way to the fractional CO2 laser. The fractional CO2 laser on your face can be like a big burn. So I tell people, why don't we just downgrade it, make it a little less powerful so we can
Mhm.
still get the effect it needs. The energy is the same, the physics the same. It's just a different area. So let's stop figuring out what's good, what's bad, and let's get women better in terms of how their function of their bladder and the vagina.
What's the downtime after getting lasered?
It's amazing. Unlike for the skin, for the face, right? It's only 2 days. 2 days, no sex. You will make it. You'll see a difference in 2 days. It doesn't last the first one. The next two do, and then you come in. I have to say, I've done this for now 12 years. It was the best machine I ever bought. It's
Really?
$180,000, $180,000, and that's probably why you're not seeing it on every corner. But it has made the biggest difference in women's lives. And I don't even remind them to come back in because, frankly, if they can't tell the difference, fine, then I'm not going to remind them. But what happens
Right.
is they go 2 or 3 years and go, hey, what? Why didn't you remind me? I forgot. And I'm like, well, okay, fine. I guess
Okay.
I'll send you a reminder. Okay, that's on me.
How much does the treatment cost and does insurance pay for it?
No, and of course this is
God forbid.
right. So this is my ad, right? So this is what I was listening to all these talk, my husband loves sports and so he's always listening to sports radio, talk radio, right? And I'm like, are you tired of another ED ad? Let's even the score. Mona Lisa Touch. So it's three treatments, it's $1,000 each. You need three of them, it's $3,000, and then once a year it's 1,000. So literally the first time you do it is three times, 6 weeks apart. That's 3 grand, and then once a year it's 1,000. So I don't think there's any guy that would be listening to your podcast that wouldn't say, "Hey, that's worth it to have
Right?
everything feel good," because it's a turn on for both of you. Then that's a nice thing.
If a woman feels off with her labs, but her labs say fine, what should she do?
Well, labs are tricky. First of all, we have to remember that labs can be wrong. I think we have this tendency to believe that if it's in black and white and somebody drew your blood, that's the right lab. No. If the lab doesn't process the sample fast enough, you can have elevated potassium or glucose, and it's really just because they didn't run it fast enough. So all of a sudden, you get this idea that if it's in black and white, it's real. It could be, but if it doesn't make sense to how you're feeling, you need to repeat it. I mean, we'd do
Right.
that in anything else we would do. It's like,
That's
why do you
true.
believe the first one? It's not the first. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But if a lab is a disconnect to how you're feeling, are we asking the right question in terms of the lab that we're drawing?
And you have to be an advocate. You know your body better than anyone. And you have to be able to say, like, you know what, this feels off or something's not right. You really do. You can't just go, oh, okay. What I find super interesting, so there's hormonal panels that we do, but there's also vitamin panels that can be done. And I think everyone should have to do that because according to me, I'm, you know, I'm all about speaking about beauty and wellness and longevity. And I am diligent with my vitamins, my green juice, I do everything I'm supposed to do. So when I went and had my hormone panels done like that, I'm like, okay, I'll accept whatever. But I was flabbergasted at my vitamin levels because my D was like, I was like malnourished. My vitamin D was so off. The omega oils, which I
Mhm,
take PS every day, I was
mhm.
taking one a day. I now have to take two in the morning and two at night. And I could not even believe. I mean, we all self diagnose with our vitamins, but it's, first of all, a total waste of money because you don't even know what you actually need. And everyone that is listening to this, I urge you, get your hormone panels done, but get your vitamin levels done and find out what you're actually lacking, or maybe that you don't even need to be taking. What are your
Right.
thoughts on that?
Right. Well, really good. So omegas may have been the other component. There were two components in that study I talked to you about in terms of gut health and prevention of Parkinson's. And it's not only is it prevention of Parkinson's. It's really delaying the symptoms of Parkinson's related to something you can take. And omegas are very important. If you think about the skin component, you need fat to be able to have good skin and good hair,
Mm.
right? So there is some elements of this in terms of, you know, those of us who mostly eat fish in a typical, 5 days a week, that's one thing, but you may not actually be getting all the right omegas. And so that's a really important thing. Vitamin D, there are different varieties. Some people get absorbed and it's fine. Some people don't. Most people are low. We want you to be around 50 to 60. Do we have anything magic bullet about that? No. But we do think it's going to make a difference in terms of decreasing inflammation. So I think it's always important to try to understand what are you getting in terms of what's being absorbed of what you're taking. And the data is very clear that a good multivitamin one a day is good for longevity. That's easy, right? The omegas, the vitamin Ds, the creatine, these other things that probably will make a difference. We still need to make sure that we understand exactly how much do we each need. But no harm, no foul, right? Educate yourself and then decide how you feel when you're taking stuff.
Another interesting thing that I learned with the multivitamin for women that are, no longer menstruating, you don't need iron in your multivitamin. In fact, it's actually not good for you. Do you
That's right.
agree with that?
Absolutely. It's absolutely. And when I see someone who's anemic and who is not menstruating, I worry about colon cancer, right? So these
Mm,
triggers of what I look for and what is the real good marker for anemia? Side note here, everybody does a blood count. That turns out to be more related to how dehydrated you are, unless you're severely anemic, right? But
right,
a ferritin is more important. That's looking at what are your iron stores, how is your bone marrow coping for your loss of blood? And if your ferritin's in the single digits, you are severely anemic and we need to address it. So I think we sometimes get the wrong lab when we get things drawn. So we need to
right.
understand that also. What do we do? What are we getting and what's going to make a difference?
It's really shocking to me how dehydrated people are. And my kids are so sick and tired of hearing me because anytime they tell me anything, I'm like, you're dehydrated, you need water. You have a headache, you're dehydrated. And what do you tell your patients about water intake? Like, it's just shocking to me that people don't realize the enormity of the importance of staying hydrated.
Yes, it's a relatively simple thing. I think people have gotten a little bit better about carrying water bottles and paying attention, but I do think that you have to think about fluids in general. It's like, all right, if you have a cup of coffee, we know that will dehydrate you. If you have tea, we know that's going to dehydrate you. You're going to have to balance this out at some point so that you actually are not drinking something that's actually making it worse. So, whatever you're doing in terms of drinking, pay attention to something that's actually going to be helping you, not actually subtracting. So, I
Right.
think that's the other part. And, get again, this is good habits. I mean, what is going to make you think about drinking? Well, certainly if you have a meal, that's a good opportunity. But
But
what
they
about
say that's bad, though. They say you're not supposed to drink water while you eat because it dilutes the nutrients and minerals of what you're eating.
you're
Do you?
never drinking? You're never drinking that much to dilute them. You just don't.
Okay.
Nobody can do that. And by the way, if you're not drinking any other time, it's an easy way to remember you're sitting down, right? So again, this is sort of like how do you get a habit into your life that'll make it better for you? So lots of tricks, but some of them are just simple. You do have to think about it.
I tell people all the time every time you get into the car, have water with you. If you can get into that habit, you get into the car 4, 5, 6 times a day. That will
Exactly.
be helpful, right?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to do some rapid fire questions now. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Where's your happy place?
Exercising and being outdoors.
What do you do when your day isn't flowing?
Often I will try to take a second and figure out what's going on. But I live in a environment that my entire career was you didn't know what was going to greet you. Right? You're an OB. You don't know if somebody's coming in and miscarrying, whether somebody's going to come in labor, whether somebody's coming in and hemorrhaging. You do not know. So you need to be ready when you walk in that door for everything. So there are mostly happy times taking care of women, but there aren't always happy times. And so
Right.
I think you always have to embrace the day and recognize that this day is your ability to help women's lives. And even if it feels as though some of these days are really tough because of the things that women are experiencing, it's still your job to help them if you can.
How important is self-care to you? And what are some things you do for self-care?
Well, I think it is ridiculous to have a conversation about exercise and nutrition and hormones unless you're actually doing them yourself. Because who in the heck's going to listen to you? So, my rule has been that if I can't sleep because I'm delivering a baby, which God knows I did for 34 years and should be over by tomorrow at midnight, and if I cannot sleep, I have to exercise. And that has been my rule for 34 years. And it's not exactly perfect one for one, but it's darn good because at
Right.
least with exercise, you get your metabolic heart rate up, you get your sweating, you get a chance to
Right.
reset, and that's enormous. And so I always tell people 35 years in, if I can't sleep, I exercise. So
What do you do for exercise?
so, in a typical day, I will try to do a 5 minute core, and then I'll do a 20-minute upper body or 20-minute lower body, and then I'll do either a run or a Peloton, or those are the biggies. I have to say, I'm sure I'm supposed to do more yoga. I'm sure I'm supposed to do other things, but I have always lifted weights. I have always done a lot of exercise, and I think it's an easy thing for me to do. I also, when I find myself coming home and I'm tired and it's been a long day, sometimes it just takes my husband going, "You're going to feel better if you exercise." And I remember when I was going through the menopausal change and the kids were in high school, they would literally say, "Mom, you need to exercise today."
When are you getting that workout in?
Exactly. It was
What
so
is your
funny.
what is your favorite diet um, and workout recommendations for people? I mean, we've just kind of gone over the workout, but what are your favorite diet
I
recommendations?
think the thing that's tricky about diet in general is that we're such a sugar country, right? This whole country is obsessed with sugar. If you
They're
really get,
they're they're addicts.
yeah,
I mean, I always say that sugar is crack.
it is, but it's not only crack, but it's built into every single place you ever go to. You go into the grocery store, look at all those aisles that you're exiting out. If we could just deal with the sugar crave of this country, we would help obesity, we would help diabetes, we would help heart disease, we would help all those people that are replacing joints because they really need to lose weight instead of having their joint replaced. All of that stuff is all sugar. It's all sugar. So
Totally.
my rule of thumb is I try not to start my day with sugar because if I do, my entire
Oh,
day is going to be
is
looking for sugar.
yeah, because you
So
keep needing to.
protein,
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. What is one word that your patients would use to describe you?
energetic.
Totally agree. Biggest myth about women's health.
That you can't do anything to change it. I think
Mm.
that people feel discouraged by their weight, or they get discouraged about their bone density, or they get discouraged about their hormones, they get discouraged about their relationships. We can do this. We're going to try to do this. That's our job.
What's the biggest myth about women's health?
Well, the biggest myth is that hormone replacement therapy causes breast cancer. That's never been true. That's the biggest myth.
Mm. Most underrated habit for healthy aging.
Walking.
Hormones or lifestyle, which matters more?
Well, I wouldn't say which either or, I'd say both. Um,
Right.
I'd say both. I do think that there's a generation of women. So I have been long enough in my career that I was before the WHI and I kept on the WHI in terms of keeping people on hormones in the 2000s, in the 2010s, in the 2020s. So there are many of us who have been in our careers long enough to recognize the original study was not reported correctly. There were some really good things about the WHI, less colon cancer, less bone loss, less hip fractures. Those are the good things. The missing piece was this combination of somehow cancer and breast that went together that was wrong. And so we threw the baby out with the bathwater, and that was a problem. But I think that those of us who've been at it for a long time realize that now finally some people are actually starting to talk about it, and we've been pretty consistently offering it. So I think one of the most important things about medicine is you vote with your feet. If you, as a woman, don't feel as though you're heard, or if somebody says to you, "I'm sorry, I only have 10 minutes, you'll have to come back to talk about that." Find somebody else.
What is one thing every woman should do before 40?
Well, I hope every woman before 40 can find happiness, whether it's in your career, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in having kids. I think happiness is one of the big longevity factors and can make
I
life better.
agree. Huge. One thing every woman should focus on after 50.
Weights, weights,
Yeah.
weights,
hmm
exercise, weights.
Gut health, game changer or overly hyped?
No, game changer, and we don't know enough yet. Game changer,
hmm
no question. We don't know enough. We need to educate ourselves more. GLP-1s will change this country. They absolutely will. They are glucagon-like peptides. They change gut health. They change inflammation. They change brain health. They change glucose metabolism. They change metabolic health. They change your weight. They are a drug with multiple facets in terms of how it address your health. They are game changers, and that we should all be looking at how we can actually understand them and if we need them, because it's not just weight. It's metabolic combo. It's making sure you don't have belly fat. It's making sure that you're able to exercise and you have less inflammation. It's a fabulous trump card for the pharmaceutical industry to recognize that this is a medicine. These types of medicines are going changing lives in an enormous way. And if we really understand how to use them well, we will decrease hospitalizations. We will decrease death from diabetes, from heart disease. We will decrease death from loss of bone and from, replacing joints, etc. It'll change medicine if we can get on board.
Wow. What's the best way to reset stress in under 5 minutes?
I still think a walk.
Yeah, fresh air, right?
Look where you live.
Exactly. What's one intimate health issue women are too embarrassed to bring up but shouldn't be?
I think bladder's leaking. I think that's really
Mm,
important. Let's talk about it. Like, how is your function? How's your exercise? Is your bladder functioning? Are you feeling as though as soon as you get your key in the door, you actually have to pee? Urge incontinence, stress incontinence. Those are biggies. We need to talk about them more.
what do you wish more women ask their doctor?
I think they need to ask the pros and cons of anything that they're being recommended to do. What are the pros and cons of statins? What are the pros and cons of hormone replacement therapy? What are the pros and cons of, these bone medicines that are supposed to help your bone if your bone isn't good? What do they really do? Do you build bone back, or do you just freeze your bone in the bad state it's at? So those are important things that we need to understand, and we need to get better at it, and we need to ask the pharmaceutical companies to focus on women's health, because there's been a lot lacking there.
Menopause. What's something people still misunderstand?
I have to say that, I'm talking to a wonderful group of women at UCLA who have this funny line that says menopause is having a moment and medicine is finally catching up. Um, Getting your information off the internet is goofy, okay, guys? We really, as medicine in America, we do actually have the best medicine in the world. We may not have always had the best women's medical medicine in the world, but our job as providers to women is to become the best medicine for women in the world, right? And the medical establishment in general. So I think in general, we should be getting information from people that know what they're doing and that are board certified and are menopause certified, and that they actually do have information that's probably better than the internet, certainly better than your Google search. But there are some wonderful people. I'm not saying there aren't wonderful people on Instagram that are bringing these conversations up. When I was working with Naomi Watts, when I've met both Mary Claire Haver as well as Kelly Casperson, these are wonderfully educated, board certified doctors who have really done a lot to get the conversation going. But the reality is that's not where you're getting your medical care. You should be getting your medical care nearby than to somebody that you can actually talk to and ask questions to.
This question kind of goes with that last one. AI in medicine, exciting or concerning?
Very exciting. Very exciting. If we can get the administration to start to think that science is a good thing and get rid of some of the people that are running the human and health organizations currently, we will be able to use AI and advance medicine exponentially. Exponentially. Namely, you take what do we know about this and cancer? What do we know about this and cancer? Why can't we put these together? Why are we having little silos of studies instead of actually putting it all together? AI will change medicine for the better. And we need to make sure that everybody hears that.
What is one supplement you actually believe in?
Well, I would call it protein. That's not quite a supplement, but I do believe in that quite a bit. And I think probably a multivitamin. I'm quite simple in my intake of supplements in that I sort of feel like we have such fabulous nutrition where we live with, vegetables, fruits and vegetables that are all fresh. That's a gift. And so we do get very good nutrition. But I wish that to everybody in the country, and that's not true for everybody in the country.
Right. Best health advice you've ever received?
Never dismiss a person's worry or concern.
Worst health advice you hear all the time?
Hormones cause cancer. No, I can't do that. My oncologist says no. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Fill in the blank. I'm too busy to
take time for myself.
Oh, drives me crazy. I love the people that say that and then they're victims like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't do all this. Like, no, it's your choice. But I'm never too busy to
take time, walk, exercise, eat well, relate to people, try to connect.
What is one thing you want every woman watching right now to do differently starting today?
Make sure you're heard. Make sure you're heard.
Very important. What have I not asked you that you'd like to talk about?
There's so much more to talk about. We're just getting warmed up.
We're going to have to do part A, B, C, and D.
Exactly. There's so many things that we need to walk into in terms of understanding. There's so many things that we probably have long ignored. We need to understand heart disease for women. We need to understand what is the best imaging for women in terms of heart disease. We need to understand whether or not a VO2 max makes sense in terms of exercise for women. We need to understand how does a heart function for women in terms of a heart attack. And is it a plaque buildup or is it spasm or is it, muscle function? We need to understand that women die of heart disease 7 times more than they do of breast cancer, and that we need a lot more information about cardiology and heart disease.
Lizellen, this was such an important and empowering conversation. I can't thank you enough for sharing your expertise, for your incredible work that you're doing with women's health moving forward. One of the biggest takeaways today, I think, is that we have to nourish our bodies, and how we move and how we care for ourselves fully impacts how we feel and how we age and how we show up and how we live our lives. To everyone watching, if you found this conversation helpful, inspiring, eye-opening like I have, I hope you like, comment, and subscribe. If you would like to connect with this lovely woman, I will have everything in the show notes. And as always, I know you're busy, I'm busy, we're all busy, but we still need to make time for what matters. I'll see you next time. I'm Christina Flach, and I'm too busy.